From B Media Production, this is B Podcasting. Engage your audience with podcasts.
Welcome to this special edition of B Podcasting. I'm Chris Ashmore. Podcasting is soaring in popularity. For many, it's fast becoming a regular source of enjoyment and information. For the first time ever, a majority of Australians has listened to a podcast. There's been a 56% increase in regular listeners in the last 12 months, half of whom consume 5 hours or more a week. Advances in mobile technology allows anyone, anywhere, to listen at any time while doing something else. Its on-demand qualities suit our on-the-go lifestyles. And it's a channel ripe for companies and brands to better connect and engage with audiences. This episode, we bring together interviews with some of the biggest names in commercial podcasting. What makes it so attractive for audiences? How do you make a good one? And why are organisations embracing audio content now to engage more effectively with consumers? First, it might be worth asking, what is it exactly? We begin with a definition from one of the world's leading commentators on audio content, radio futurologist James Cridland. Is there a difference between, say, podcasting and radio?
I think fundamentally there really isn't much of a difference. It's just another delivery platform. It's another way of getting audio to people. I think that what radio has done in the past is it's taken its great content and it has broadcast it once and then it's thrown it away. And that seems a ridiculous thing. You know, if you're there and you have some great content, make the most out of that content. Make it available in as many different ways as possible.
To expand further on its comparison to radio is Sharon Taylor, CEO of Omni Studio, a leading podcast hosting platform.
I think that podcasting and radio share very similar DNA. I think that radio is more of a lean back and podcasting is more lean in. And when I say that, I mean that radio is such a linear experience. You can just turn it on, it's one to many, have it playing in the background. It's continually moving ahead. So you don't need to worry about where you come into the broadcast, for instance. Whereas podcasting, people are choosing to start at a certain point, usually the beginning, you'd hope, and they're actually choosing to interact with you. They want to listen to you and what you have to say for 20 minutes. It's not just something that happens in the background.
People have always enjoyed audio content. Radio itself is one of the highest consumed of all media. 85% of Australians listen to radio in any given week. But recently, and only recently, has podcasting taken off. Why is that? Why is podcasting so attractive now as a form of information and entertainment? We turn to arguably the leading authority on podcasting in the United States, commentator Nick Quah.
I find that the form of oral storytelling to be something that's a lot more emotionally resonant. It kind of provides a deeper sense of authenticity when you're consuming whatever the story is being told, whether it's a story or whether it's a conversation. There's a sense that it draws you into the experience in a way that is a lot more just rich in its experience. But podcasting specifically as a specific form of audio programming, I think the fact that it's on demand, it's also a big part of that consumption experience. You choose to listen to a conversation about politics. You choose to listen to a story about whatever comes on 99% Invisible or Reply All or whatever. You've made the explicit choice to create the space for yourself.
No doubt the experience itself is unique, but it also comes down to the broad range of topics on offer, which radio can't provide. Corey Layton of podcast hosting platform Whooshka says podcasting allows in-depth information on niche subjects.
What podcasting does offer that I don't think radio can is breadth, where it can cover all sorts of specific niches on a wide range of topics. So if you're into podcasting, you can listen to a podcast about podcasting. Mm-hmm. Radio is not going to play a radio show about podcasting because it just doesn't make sense. So the breadth of topics that you can find that caters to you, it's similar in a lot of ways to Netflix. It's on demand. It's the content that you want when you want. And that for me is the massive difference between podcasting and radio.
And then there's a connection a listener has with those talking on a podcast. Sharon Taylor of Omni Studio explains.
I'm in someone's ears right now, and it's such a different way of listening to audio. It's so personal. You know, you think that these people are your friends and talking directly to you, and you're more willing to listen to what they've got to say, and that extends to branding, that extends to advertising. And I think that brands are waking up to the fact that there's this really engaged, passionate listener base out there that are willing to believe what comes out of a host's mouth because they haven't yet sold out, I suppose, like to put it in a crass kind of way. So there's that trust there.
Which brings us to brands and how more businesses and other organisations are finding podcasting's a powerful way to engage with audiences. It's not a new shiny thing to play with. It's not a passing fad. There are very real reasons why companies are involving themselves with podcasting. It comes down to people choosing to listen and doing so actively, not passively. Radio futurologist James Cridland explains.
I think people have actually made the decision to listen, so it's not wallpaper. People typically are listening with earbuds in, so they've actually got real attention, real focus on what they're listening to. And you can't very easily, at least, turn off your ears. You know, you can't very easily skip through advertising in the way that you can in the newspaper, for example. You know, when an ad comes on, particularly if it's a sponsorship message being read by the presenter that you're listening to anyway, you do actually pay notice to it. Podcasting, it really is sort of word-of-mouth advertising, but it's word-of-mouth advertising, of course, you know, through a downloaded piece of audio that you've listened to.
And it's a good opportunity for brands to really understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the opportunities for brands are very large. I think there's a caveat there that people won't deliberately seek out a podcast which is just advertising.
Nick Quah sees podcasting as particularly attractive for advertisers.
You have an audience that explicitly chose to consume the thing. This is a space in which the audience is ripe for an interaction with the advertiser. They will listen to, you know, an hour-long conversation that's very compelling, and, you know, they would sort of stumble into the advertising experiences in a way that's meaningful to them.
Courtney Carthy, founder and CEO of podcast network Nearly Media, agrees.
I think it's attractive because you can reach a new audience, something that's direct but extremely sort of, I said, fairly indiscriminate in terms of, you know, where it goes. So you can actually get more value from the perception of, you know, this is going to reach X amount of people. There's a flow-on and lasting effect of having that conversation with a listener as a brand. Plus, you've got the host that they trust probably reading your ad as well, so it's the brand speaking through them.
What kinds of companies are using podcasting to achieve better engagement with audiences? The United States has an endless number of examples, reflecting the fact that they've been much earlier adopters than anywhere else. But closer to home, we're seeing an increase in Australian companies benefiting from podcasts. Whooshka's Corey Layton.
There's a great podcast out of Australia called Decoding Genius, which is about childhood geniuses and really plays to that innovation message of looking to the future, looking at who our future innovators are and what they're doing. And the amount of branding in them is really minimal. And that's because I think GE is brave enough to go, let's back in exciting, innovative concepts and tell those stories knowing that our brand will be part of that.
VP Communications at GE Australia is Joanne Wu, who's been influential in the company's embrace of audio as part of its marketing strategy. The 6-part series Decoding Genius, hosted by celebrity mathematician Lily Cerner, deservedly won a coveted International News Media Association award.
Decoding Genius became one of the most successful branded podcasts in Australia, and in its first week after launch, it ranked in the top 10 podcast list on iTunes.
Now, a podcast, though, it's not something that GE has done in Australia before. What was the idea behind doing a podcast versus something else?
Well, I think it comes down to the storytelling and wanting to find a platform where we could tell fascinating stories in an intimate way with people, with audiences. And we wanted to do that because we believe that great stories shape you and that they inspire, they drive change. And at GE, we see our role as an expansive brand to get people excited about science and technology and the impact it can make to changing the world. I think the world has changed so significantly that the way people want to interact with brands is completely different to 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even 12 months ago. They really want to connect on a deeper level, and they want to hear stories that resonate with their values and their aspirations.
That's GE's Joanne Wu. Another Australian organisation which has wholly embraced podcasting is women's media network Mamamia. Former Managing Director of Mamamia, Kylie Rogers, paints the picture.
We built ourselves a little mobile podcast studio in our Sydney office and our Melbourne office. And we launched our first podcast, Mamamia Out Loud, which is what women are talking about this week with 3 of our key talent. Within 3 months, it won the iTunes Best New Podcast. And we thought, we're on to something here. Let's keep going. Fast forward, and today we are producing 18 podcasts a week. Oh. According to iTunes, we are the world's largest podcast network for women. We know women are talking about parenting, pelvic floor and politics all in the one conversation. We're quite generalist in our views. So, yeah, I think we have an authentic take that differentiates us to our competitors out there. And right now we do that through authentic content. And we bring our clients along for the ride, creating authentic branded content. And we do that through video, through written and through podcasts.
That word, authenticity, it's one you'll hear often. Podcasting allows a brand to not only become part of the conversation, but lead a conversation. Nick Qua.
It's also embedded to this notion of intimacy. The role of the host and the role of the narrator and the role of the voice is huge in the experience of podcast programming in general. And the sort of endorsement model, right? The whole thing that I think media is struggling with right now is this notion of trust and the notion of a relationship with the media source. And I think within podcasting, the existence of trust is particularly strong between listener and creator. And I think that is something that is valuable to advertisers.
Content marketing guru Peter Gearin is founder and editor of leading online content marketing magazine Branded Tales. Peter digs a little deeper into this notion of authenticity.
I really believe in the concept of sincerity rather than authenticity. I know it's a subtle difference, but I think sincerity is about being honest and truthful in yourself and not trying to sound like what you think you should be. And I think podcasts give people a much better idea of who you really are.
No doubt then, podcasting's attractive in many ways for audiences. But how do you know creating a podcast actually achieves results? Is there a measurable return on investment? Do brands get back what they dish out? Simple answer, yes. People are leaning in. They're focused on what's being said. It stands to reason that they actually remember brands much better in a podcast. Mamamia Women's Network, for example, works closely with its commercial partners and advertisers and draws them into the stories on its podcasts. Kylie Rogers explains.
What's great about podcasts is it's really intimate and women are leaning in. They're choosing to better understand what content we're tackling within that podcast. And so they want to be there. And we have something like 82% unaided ad recall for all of our clients who are sponsoring our podcast, and it is very, very effective.
82% unaided ad recall. How many ads do you remember from a glossy magazine you last flicked through, or from dozens of ads blasted at you from an hour of commercial radio? GE's Joanne Wu has a bigger picture when it comes to podcasting and the results it wants to achieve.
There are some things that you can measure and some things that you just need to experiment with because you know it's a growing platform. So we do have metrics like engagement and brand awareness. But what's more important to me is, does the content resonate with our audience? Do the stories inspire them? And in doing so, does it create a more meaningful connection with what the GE brand stands for? When you look at who we are today, it's completely different to who we are 10 years ago even. So our marketing strategy has to bring that vision to life. And that extends to how we show ourselves as a brand. We're always among the first to try new platforms. We push ourselves to reach new audiences in unexpected ways, and innovation is in our DNA, including the way we lead with our brand.
Podcasting's the pinnacle of content marketing and engagement, as Peter Gearin of Branded Tales attests.
In the end, what good content marketing does is help build credibility, awareness and trust over time. And then you hope that the audience that actually is listening to you will eventually reward you with their business. How do you find immediate return on investment on something that takes a very long time to establish? I don't think it's just about attracting likes or shares on social media or web views. I think that any metric that measures trust and authority are really important when it comes to getting results from content.
Podcasts for brands don't have to be ongoing episodes like audio blogging. There's what's known as utility-based content or evergreen content, which provides specific information for people looking to learn something. Digital marketing strategist Beck Kempster explains.
Podcasting is a great way to build a library of evergreen content that can be accessed or repurposed in future. So let's take realestate.com.au for example, and think about a podcast episode where they might talk about buyers downsizing and what they should consider as part of their decision process in their purchase. This content would have quite a considerable lifespan. Shopify provide e-commerce tools for building e-commerce websites. They have a great podcast called Thank God It's Monday. It's suitably released every Monday, and they dub it as the essential podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs. So they're bringing people inspirational stories from the world's top entrepreneurs. For them, it's about owning the entrepreneur space and providing advice for users of their platform and potential users of that platform. And it's about building trust and that their name is synonymous with entrepreneurism.
A particularly well-known utility-based podcast is Modern Babies, produced by Nova Entertainment for fertility clinic Genea. It aims to explain the process of using IVF treatment, male infertility and other important topics around fertility. Josh Butt, producer and co-host of Modern Babies, explains.
This is a utility content. You're not going to listen to it unless you're really, unless you're interested in having a baby, you're not going to be listening to this. This is not the right way to compare it, but I compare it to Bunnings videos, right? You don't need the how to hang a door video until you're hanging a door. And then you really need it. And it serves its purpose. And that's why I call it, utility content. It serves that purpose when you need it. So that's what this is designed for.
So the benefits of podcasting for these organisations are obvious, providing a voice for their brand and owning the space in their market. It then brings us to the question of how. How do you make a top quality podcast? How do you draw listeners in? And how do you make them stay to listen to the whole series or future episodes? Radio futurologist James Cridland.
If you're going to get into podcasting, do it well. Invest in the podcasting, make it sound great, and make a great archive of great sounding audio that you can continue using. One of the things of making a great podcast is edit it down and then edit it down again. And then if you think you've got it about the right length, then make it shorter once more. People really like their time being respected, I think. And so that's hugely important. Production values, production quality is, I think, becoming more and more important when people are, tuning into all kinds of other podcasts that they can get.
And don't neglect the tools, says Nick Qua.
You need to have good equipment. No matter how good your story might be, no matter what you produce, the game is always to lower the amount of friction that listeners will have when they try to consume your podcast. And so the very basic thing that can be easily fixed is just having relatively good audio quality. That goes a long way. And that should be true for everybody. Everybody should be concerned about that.
Peter Gearin says a good podcast comes down to planning.
I don't think there are any shortcuts in the end when it comes to producing quality content. I think you have to have a good strategy, good ideas, good content providers, people with a good level of experience. You also need to promote it really well once it's done, but I guess amplification is another topic altogether.
Rob Walsh is VP Podcast Relations at podcasting network Libsyn in the United States and one of the leading authorities on podcasting. He says respect your audience.
Engage with your audience, engage with your customer base when they have an opportunity to listen but not do anything else. I mean, people forget there's more time in the day to listen to audio than there is anything else. Businesses that understand that and create content that educates, engages, and interacts with their audience while they're driving, having them listening to this something about their marketplace and builds that brand while they're listening to it. That's a very successful podcast.
Content strategist Andrew Sidwell says a podcast gives companies an opportunity to show their brand's personality.
So what you have to educate them is going, no, your brand is a character in these stories that we're going to tell. It may come in and play a part. It may not. Like GE, it may sit in the background and kind of sit in the intros and the outros. So from a brand point of view, it's just a really interesting way to kind of engage an audience. You've also got to have an appetite to be open that we're going to ask you to do things differently than you have done in your past when you've made kind of brand communications before. So you've got to, it's not necessarily scripted. It's free-flowing interviews where they could zag off in a different direction. We have the luxury of kind of post-production. But from a brand point of view, it just allows them to have a different conversation with the consumer and then present themselves.
Making a podcast is one thing, but getting the word out, having people, your target audience, know about it and listen to it, that's a whole different ball game. An amplification strategy is as important as the content itself. Josh Butt on Modern Babies.
It has definitely had an amplification strategy attached to it to make sure that it doesn't just sit in isolation. The distribution of the content is also via Acast. It's almost as important as what you're making.
Andrew Sidwell explains what kind of work needs to be done to market the podcast for a finite series.
We'll create online promos, video, audio. We'll create articles. So it's all around that, and in launch week, things like homepage takeovers have worked really well for us. Audio embedded super leaderboards, lots of native ads through Outbrain and Plister. So build a really incredible kind of launch strategy and then have that, and then have the ongoing, each time a new episode drops, different ways to kind of spike it.
Audio content's come a long way over the last 12 months and expected to grow much bigger. The opportunities for businesses, member organisations, not-for-profits and thought leaders as a form of storytelling is huge. As smart speakers become regular household fixtures, as technology in vehicles allows easier access to streamed audio, and as podcasts become better produced, the question won't be whether to get involved in podcasting, it'll be why you're not involved. We'll leave you with these final thoughts from GE's VP Communications, Joanne Wu.
I think audio is going to kill the video star, but that's probably me being overdramatic. Certainly what we're seeing is that audio is experiencing significant growth as a platform and will one day be consumed just as frequently as video, if not more. So I think as a brand, you need to have an audio strategy, and it provides a channel for brands to engage with audiences on a deeper and more intimate level.
B Podcasting is produced by B Media Production. Since 1984, we've created audio content for Australia's largest brands. For more about how we can help you create engaging podcasts, call us on 1800 039 098. I'm Chris Ashmore. Thanks for listening.
B Podcasting is produced by the team at B Media Production. Managing Director Nick Schildberger, Executive Producer Heather Dawson, Producer Chris Ashmore, and I'm Peter Letts, Director of Audio. For more about us, go to be.com.au.